6 months passed on Verath Prime, and the humans worked harder than they had ever worked before. They shared their knowledge freely, offering everything they had to prove their value to the Council. They gave away medical research that had taken decades to develop. They showed their engineering designs to anyone who would look. They attended every meeting, every ceremony, every cultural exchange program the Council offered. The Council took everything and gave nothing back. Daniel stood in the Great Hall of the Medical Academy, watching Dr. Amanda Price present her life's work to an audience of alien scientists. Amanda was small and quiet, with dark hair that she always kept tied back in a practical bun. She had spent 15 years developing a treatment for Kelleron's disease, a sickness that had plagued 3 council species for over 2,000 years. Millions had died from it. Millions more suffered every day. And Amanda had found the cure. She explained her research in simple terms, showing charts and data that proved beyond any doubt that her treatment worked. The alien scientists watched with expressions that ranged from boredom to suspicion. When she finished, she waited for questions with hope shining in her eyes. The Krithax delegate spoke first. His name was Vornak, and he was even larger than most of his kind, with scars covering his face and arms. His voice rumbled like thunder in a canyon. "Where did you steal this research?" he asked. Amanda blinked. "I am sorry? Humans have only been in space for a short time. You do not have the knowledge to create such a cure. You must have taken it from another species. Perhaps the Salathi. They have been working on this problem for centuries." He put a hand on her arm to keep her still. Amanda's voice shook, but she did not back down. "I developed this treatment in my laboratory on Earth. Every piece of data, every test, every trial is documented. I can show you the records." Vornak waved a massive hand. "Records can be falsified. The Council will investigate the true source of this research. Until then, your cure will not be approved for use." Amanda looked like she might cry. 15 years of work, dismissed in an instant, because the Council could not believe a human might actually accomplish something worth respecting. Daniel stepped forward. "I request a formal hearing to address these accusations. Humanity has done nothing but try to help since we arrived. We deserve to be heard." The Valori representative, a younger male named Sethris, made a note on his device. "Your request is granted. The hearing will be scheduled when the Council has time." It was set during the Festival of Ancient Light, a minor holiday when most Council delegates returned to their home worlds. Only 7 of the 12 species bothered to send representatives. The great chamber that could hold thousands was nearly empty. Daniel stood at the center of the floor and presented his case. He showed the evidence of Amanda's research, step by step. He displayed records of every contribution humanity had made since arriving. He spoke of their desire for peace, their hope for partnership, their belief that different species could work together for the good of all. High Chancellor Zorveth listened from his high seat, his silver feathers catching the light from the crystal windows above. His expression never changed. When Daniel finished speaking, the chamber was silent for a long moment. Then Zorveth spoke. "The Council will take this matter under advisement. When can we expect a decision?" "When the Council is ready to give one." Weeks passed. No decision came. No message arrived. The humans sent inquiries that went unanswered. They requested meetings that were never scheduled. It was as if their hearing had never happened. Lisa came to Daniel one night with a look on her face that he had learned to recognize. It meant she had found something he would not like. "I intercepted a Council transmission," she said. "They have been discussing humanity in private sessions. Sessions we were not invited to." Daniel put down the report he was reading. "What are they saying?" "They are afraid of us." Lisa pulled up the translated transcript on her tablet. "Not afraid of what we are now. Afraid of what we might become. They say we advance too quickly. They say we are unpredictable. They say we might become a threat to Council stability within a few generations. Kevin looked up from his desk across the room. A threat? We have been nothing but cooperative. That is what worries them, Lisa said. They expected us to be aggressive, violent, easy to dismiss. Instead, we came with gifts and open hands. They do not understand why we would do that unless we were hiding something. Daniel read the transcript slowly. The words were cold and clinical, discussing humanity like a problem to be solved rather than a people to be welcomed. Some delegates wanted to quarantine human space, cutting them off from the rest of the galaxy. Others wanted to limit human population growth. A few suggested more extreme measures that made Daniel's blood run cold. They were never going to accept us, he said quietly. No matter what we did, no matter how many lives we saved or how much we gave them. So, what do we do? Kevin asked. Daniel looked out the window at the alien city below. Millions of beings lived in those silver towers, going about their lives without any idea that a small group of humans was fighting for the right to be seen as equals. Most of them probably did not care. Humans were just another young species, here today and forgotten tomorrow. But Daniel remembered something his father had told him long ago, back when he was a boy growing up in Virginia. His father had been a civil rights lawyer, who spent his life fighting battles that seemed impossible to win. You cannot make someone respect you, his father had said. You can only make sure you deserve respect. And then if they still refuse to give it, you have to decide what kind of person you want to be. Daniel made his decision. We keep trying, he said. We document everything. We help where we can. And we wait for our moment. Lisa frowned. What moment? The moment when they need us. Because sooner or later they will. And when that day comes, we will show them exactly what humanity is capable of. He turned away from the window and went back to work. There were reports to file, meetings to request, bridges to build with any species willing to listen. The path was long, and the obstacles were many. But Daniel Carter had not come this far to give up. The Council would learn the truth about humanity. One way or another, they would learn. The distress signal reached Verith Prime at 3 a.m, local time. It was loud and desperate and filled with screaming. The Mordeth had come for the Salathi colony world of Nathara 5. Daniel was awakened by Lisa pounding on his door. He dressed quickly and followed her to the council chamber, where chaos had already taken hold. Delegates shouted at each other in a dozen languages. Holographic displays showed the Salathi colony burning, its cities in flames, its people running for shelters that could not hold everyone. The Mordeth were nomads, wanderers who lived on massive ships that drifted between the stars. They took what they wanted and killed anyone who tried to stop them. The Council had fought them before, long ago, and the war had cost millions of lives. Since then, both sides had maintained an uneasy distance. That distance was over now. The Salathi delegate was named Marine. She was small and delicate, with pale blue skin and large dark eyes that were now wet with tears. Her voice broke as she begged the Council for help. 400,000 of my people are on Nathara 5, she said. Families, children, the Mordeth will not spare them. Please, we need your ships. We need them now. High Chancellor Zorveth raised a hand for silence. His expression was grave, but Daniel noticed something else in those ancient eyes. Calculation. Zorveth was not thinking about the dying Salathi. He was thinking about what this crisis meant for the Council's power. The Council hears your plea, Zorveth said. We will discuss the matter and reach a decision. Marine's face went pale. Discuss? My people are dying right now. Every moment we waste, more of them are killed. The Mordeth are not to be underestimated, the Krythax delegate Vornak rumbled. If we send a fleet and fail, it will only encourage more attacks. We must be careful. Careful? Marine's voice rose to a cry. You speak of caution while children burn. What good is this council if it cannot protect its own members? The debate went on for hours. Some delegates wanted to send a full battle fleet immediately. Others warned that such action could lead to a wider war. A few suggested that the Salathi should negotiate with the Mordeth, perhaps offer tribute to make them leave. Daniel listened to it all with growing anger. These were supposed to be the wisest beings in the galaxy, the leaders of civilizations that had lasted for thousands of years. And they were sitting in comfortable chairs arguing about politics while innocent people died. When there was a break in the shouting, Daniel stepped forward. Every eye in the chamber turned to him. "High Chancellor," he said, "humanity offers its assistance. Our fleet is small, but our ships are fast. We can reach Nathara 5 in 40 hours. We are willing to fight alongside any council forces you send." Zorveth looked at him the way a teacher might look at a child who had spoken out of turn. "Ambassador Carter, your offer is noted, but this is a matter for experienced military powers. Humans lack the training and capability for such a mission." "With respect, High Chancellor, my people have been fighting wars since before we had metal. We know how to protect the innocent." Vornak let out a sound that was almost a laugh. "Human wars. Small creatures fighting over small patches of dirt on a small world. The Mordeth have destroyed entire civilizations. You would only get in the way." Daniel felt Lisa's hand on his arm, warning him to stay calm. He took a breath and tried one more time. "Then let us prove ourselves. Send us with your fleet. If we fail, you lose nothing. If we succeed, you gain allies who have shown their worth in battle." Zorveth shook his head slowly. "The Council formally declines your offer. Humanity will remain in designated areas during this crisis. You are dismissed." Daniel stood very still for a moment. He looked at Marine, whose hope had turned to despair. He looked at the other delegates, most of whom had already returned to their arguments. He looked at Zorveth, whose ancient face showed nothing but cold certainty. Then Daniel nodded once and walked out of the chamber. He did not go back to his quarters. Instead, he went to the human section of the orbital station and found Commander Chris Turner waiting for him. Chris was young for a captain, only 35, with red hair and a jaw that always seemed set for a fight. He commanded the Endurance, the largest ship in the human fleet. "You heard?" Daniel asked. Chris nodded. "The whole station heard. What are your orders, sir?" "Somewhere out there, 400,000 Salathi were waiting to die because the galaxy's greatest powers were too afraid to help them." "The Council said no," Daniel said slowly. "But I never asked for permission to act as a private citizen." Chris understood immediately. "Sir, if we do this without authorization, the Council could expel us. They could declare war on Earth." "They could, but they probably will not. We are too useful as a scapegoat, and too unimportant to waste resources destroying." Daniel turned to face the young captain. "I am not ordering you to do anything, Chris. This has to be your choice, and the choice of every person on those ships." Chris was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled, a hard and determined expression that reminded Daniel of himself when he was younger. "Give me 1 hour to talk to my crews," Chris said. "If anyone wants to stay behind, they can. But I think you will find that humans do not like standing by while innocent people die." 1 hour later, 6 human ships broke orbit and jumped to hyperspace. They told no one where they were going. They left no message, no explanation, no request for forgiveness. They arrived at Nathara 5 in 38 hours, faster than Daniel had promised. The planet was in chaos. Mordeth raiders swarmed over the cities, their weapons burning everything they touched. The Salathi defense forces were broken, scattered, fighting desperate last stands in a dozen locations. Chris Turner opened a channel to all ships. His voice was calm and steady. "All hands, this is the Endurance. We are here to save as many people as we can. We are outnumbered and outgunned. Some of us will not make it home. But those people down there are counting on us, and we will not let them down. All ships, engage the enemy. Let them see what humans are made of. The battle lasted 14 hours. The Endurance took a direct hit to its main engine and nearly broke apart. A ship called the Resolute lost half its crew when a Mordeth boarding party breached the hull. 37 humans died in the cold darkness of space, far from home, fighting for people they had never met. But when the sun rose over Nethera 5, the Mordeth fleet was in retreat. 400,000 Salathi were still alive, and the humans who had saved them were already on their way back to face whatever judgment awaited them. The galaxy had seen what humanity was capable of. Now the question was whether the Council was wise enough to understand what it meant. The human ships returned to Verath Prime 3 days after the battle. They came in slowly, their hulls scarred and blackened, their engines limping through the final stretch of space. The Endurance looked like it had been through a war, because it had. Holes marked where Mordeth weapons had punched through the armor. Emergency patches covered breaches that would have killed everyone aboard if the repair crews had been even a few seconds slower. Word had spread faster than light itself. Every species in the galaxy knew what the humans had done. On Verath Prime, crowds gathered at the observation platforms to watch the battered fleet arrive. Some of them cheered. Others simply stared in silence, trying to understand what kind of people would sacrifice so much for strangers who had treated them like dirt. Daniel Carter stood at the viewport of his shuttle as it descended toward the council chamber. He had not slept in 4 days. His eyes were red, and his hands shook slightly from exhaustion. But his mind was clear, clearer than it had been in months. He knew exactly what was coming. The Council had summoned him to answer for humanity's actions. Not to thank him, not to honor the 37 men and women who had given their lives. To answer, to explain, to apologize. Lisa walked beside him as they entered the great chamber. Kevin followed close behind, his face pale and worried. Dr. Amanda Price came too, along with every human diplomat and officer still on Verath Prime. They formed a small group at the center of the vast floor, surrounded by the towering seats of the council delegates above them. High Chancellor Zorveth looked down from his position at the highest point of the chamber. His silver feathers were perfectly arranged, his expression as cold and distant as the moons that circled his world. Around him sat the delegates of the 12 species, their faces showing a mixture of emotions. Some looked angry. Some looked confused. A few, like Marine of the Salathi, looked grateful beyond words. Zorveth did not wait for silence. His voice cut through the murmurs like a blade. Ambassador Carter, you stand before this council accused of serious violations. You acted without authorization. You crossed into a restricted combat zone. You interfered in a military situation that was not your concern. You risked drawing your species into a wider war that could have destabilized the entire region. Daniel said nothing. He simply stood and listened. Furthermore, Zorveth continued, you ignored a direct order from this council. When we declined your offer of assistance, you should have remained in your designated area. Instead, you took it upon yourself to decide what was best for everyone. This is not how a probationary member behaves. Still, Daniel said nothing. Vornak, the Krythax, leaned forward in his seat, his scarred face twisted with something that might have been reluctant respect, quickly hidden behind a mask of authority. 37 of your people died, Vornak said. This is the price of acting without thinking. If you had waited for proper planning, proper support, perhaps they would still be alive. Daniel felt the words like a knife in his chest. He thought of the names he had memorized, the faces he had seen in photographs sent from the ships. Young men and women who had volunteered to save strangers and paid the ultimate price. He thought of their families back on Earth, who were only now learning that their loved ones would never come home. But still he said nothing. Zorveth spread his wings slightly, a gesture that indicated finality. The Council demands a formal apology from the human delegation. You will acknowledge that your actions were improper. You will submit to whatever sanctions we deem appropriate. You will accept your place in the order of this galaxy, and stop pretending to be something you are not. The chamber fell silent. Every eye was on Daniel Carter, the human ambassador who had dared to do what the Council would not. They waited for him to speak, to defend himself, to argue and plead and beg for understanding. Daniel looked up at Zorveth. He looked at the other delegates, one by one. He saw pride and fear and anger and shame, all mixed together in faces that had lived for centuries, and still did not understand what it meant to act simply because it was right. He thought about all the words he could say. He could explain that humanity had not asked for permission because they knew it would not be given. He could argue that 37 lives were a small price for 400,000 saved. He could point out that the Council had failed its own member when it mattered most, and that humans had done what the great powers of the galaxy were too afraid to do. But what would be the point? The Council did not want to understand. They wanted submission. They wanted humans to bow their heads and accept that they would never be equals, no matter what they did or how many lives they saved. Daniel had spent his whole life believing that patience and diplomacy could solve any problem. He had taught his daughter that words were more powerful than weapons, that understanding could bridge any gap. He had come to Verath Prime believing that if humanity just tried hard enough, they could earn their place among the stars. He did not believe that anymore. Daniel turned away from the High Chancellor without saying a single word. He walked toward the exit, his footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. Behind him, Lisa fell into step without hesitation. Then Kevin, then Amanda, then every human in the chamber, one by one, turning their backs on the Council and walking away. Zorveth's voice rang out behind them. Ambassador Carter, you will return and face this Council. You will answer for your actions. Daniel did not look back. None of them did. This is unacceptable. You cannot simply walk away. There will be consequences. The doors of the chamber closed behind the last human, cutting off Zorveth's words mid-sentence. Within the hour, every human on Verath Prime was aboard a ship. Within 6 hours, the entire human fleet had left Council space. They jumped to hyperspace at the border, and then, one by one, disabled their communication relays. The Council sent messages, demanding explanation. They sent warnings of sanctions and threats of action. They sent pleas for negotiation. They received no response. Humanity had walked away without a word. Not in anger, not in hatred, not in fear. They had simply decided that there was nothing more to say to people who would never listen. The Council chamber remained in session long after the humans left. The delegates argued and shouted and blamed each other for what had happened. Zorveth sat in silence, staring at the empty space where Daniel Carter had stood. For the first time in his very long life, the High Chancellor of the Galactic Council did not know what to do next. And somewhere in the vast darkness between the stars, 37 human heroes slept their final sleep, remembered by the species they had saved, and forgotten by the species they had tried to join. It would not always be that way, but for now, silence was the only answer humanity had left to give. 1 year passed, and the galaxy changed in ways no one had expected. At first, the Council waited for humanity to return. They were certain the young species would come crawling back within weeks, begging for forgiveness, desperate to rejoin the galactic community. Humans were social creatures, the experts said. They needed connection. They could not survive in isolation. But weeks turned into months. and no human ship appeared at the border. No messages came asking for negotiations. No diplomats arrived seeking a second chance. Human space went dark and quiet, a region of the galaxy that had simply stopped talking to everyone else. Trade routes that had begun to include human goods went silent. The medical advances that Dr. Amanda Price had shared were incomplete without human doctors to implement them. 3 council species faced renewed outbreaks of diseases that humans had nearly cured. And thousands died because the treatment protocols required human expertise that was no longer available. The Krithaks were the first to complain publicly. Their young were suffering from a blood disease that human medicine could treat, but council doctors could not replicate. Vornak, the same delegate who had accused humans of stealing their research, now demanded that the council do something to bring them back. Zorveth had no answer for him. The Mordeth, emboldened by the council's hesitation during the Nethara 5 crisis, launched new raids. 2 more colony worlds fell in 6 months. The council fleet eventually responded, but their ships were slow and their commanders were cautious. By the time they arrived, the damage was done. On Nethara 5, the Salathi built a memorial to the 37 humans who had died saving them. It stood in the center of the capital city, a tower of white stone reaching toward the sky. Every year on the anniversary of the battle, the entire planet observed a moment of silence. Children learned the names of human heroes in school. Parents told stories of the day the young species came when no one else would. Marine, the Salathi delegate, made a formal announcement 6 months after humanity's departure. Her people were withdrawing from the Galactic Council. They no longer believed the Council could protect them or deserved their loyalty. Other species watched and wondered if they should do the same. High Chancellor Zorveth aged visibly over that year. His silver feathers grew dull and thin. His voice lost its commanding power. He spent long nights in his private chambers, reading the transcripts of every interaction between humanity and the Council, searching for the moment when everything went wrong. Over and over again, he had dismissed and diminished and denied. He had been so certain that humans were beneath him, beneath the Council, beneath consideration as equals. He had been so afraid of what they might become that he had never stopped to see what they already were. A young Veilori diplomat named Kethris came to him one night with a proposal. She wanted to go to the human border and ask them to talk. Not as a representative of the Council, not with demands or conditions, just as one person reaching out to another. Zorveth looked at her for a long time. She was young and idealistic, full of the hope that he had lost somewhere along the way. Part of him wanted to refuse, to tell her that humans had made their choice and would have to live with it. But another part of him, a small, quiet part that he had been ignoring for far too long, knew that someone had to try. He let her go. Kethris traveled to the human border in a small shuttle, carrying nothing but a white flag and a message from the Salathi people. She waited at the boundary line for 6 days, her supplies running low, her hope fading with each passing hour. On the 7th day, a human ship appeared. It was called the Resolute, one of the vessels that had fought at Nethara 5. Its hull still bore the scars of that battle, marks of honor that would never be repaired. Commander Natalie Webb commanded it now, a woman in her 40s, with kind eyes and a voice that carried the weight of everything she had seen. Natalie brought Kethris aboard and listened to her message. She read the words from the Salathi, the gratitude and the sorrow and the desperate hope that humanity would not abandon the galaxy forever. When she finished reading, Kethris looked up at the human commander with pleading eyes. "Will you come back?" she asked. "The Council needs you. The galaxy needs you." Natalie was quiet for a long moment. She thought about Daniel Carter, who had retired from diplomacy and was now teaching history at a university on Earth. She thought about Chris Turner, who still commanded the Endurance and spent his days patrolling human space, protecting the borders that no one else respected. She thought about the 37 names carved into the memorial on her ship, names she saw every day and would never forget. "We did not leave because we were angry," Natalie said finally. "We left because we realized something. The council was never going to see us as equals. No matter how much we gave, no matter how many lives we saved, no matter how hard we tried. We were always going to be the young species, the children, the newcomers who needed to learn their place." Kethris felt tears forming in her eyes. "I am sorry. I am so sorry for how you were treated." "I know you are. And that means something." Natalie reached out and touched the young diplomat's shoulder gently. "But sorry is not enough. The council has to change. Not just apologize, not just make promises, but actually become something different. Something better. Until that happens, we have nothing to talk about." "How will you know if they have changed?" Natalie smiled, and there was sadness in it, but also something else. Something that looked almost like hope. "We will know," she said, "and when that day comes, we will be ready. But it has to be real. It has to come from them. Not because they need us, but because they finally understand that every species deserves respect. Every species has value. Every species can contribute something precious to the galaxy, no matter how young they are." Kethris returned to Vereth Prime and delivered the message. She spoke to Zorveth in private, telling him everything Natalie had said. The old chancellor listened without interrupting, his ancient eyes fixed on something far away. When Kethris finished, she waited for his response. Zorveth was silent for a very long time. Then he spoke, and his voice was softer than she had ever heard it. "I have made many mistakes in my life," he said. "I have been proud when I should have been humble. I have been certain when I should have listened. I have looked at younger species and seen only what they lacked, never what they had to offer." He turned to face her, and Kethris saw something in his eyes that she had never expected to see. Regret, deep and genuine and painful. "The humans taught me something I should have learned long ago," Zorveth said. "Respect is not given to those who demand it. It is earned by those who offer it first. I demanded respect from them while offering nothing but contempt. And now I am paying the price." "What will you do?" Kethris asked. Zorveth looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, in a quiet corner of the galaxy, humanity was waiting to see if the council could learn from its mistakes. "I will try to change," he said. "I do not know if I can. I do not know if the council will follow. But I will try, because the alternative is to remain exactly what we have always been. And I am no longer certain that is something to be proud of." The galaxy watched human space in silence and waited. The future was uncertain, the path forward unclear. But for the first time, in a very long time, there was a chance that things might be different. All because a young species had the courage to walk away, and the wisdom to know that sometimes silence speaks louder than any words ever could. The ship came out of hyperspace with a soft hum, and Daniel Carter stood at the observation deck, looking at the planet below. Vereth Prime was beautiful in a cold way. Its cities stretched across the surface like silver webs, and its 3 moons hung in the sky like pale guardians. This was the heart of the Galactic Council, the seat of power for 12 ancient species that had ruled the galaxy for 50,000 years. Daniel took a deep breath. He was 52 years old, a former Navy captain who had spent 20 years in space before becoming a diplomat. His hair was gray at the temples, and his face carried the lines of a man who had seen both wonder and war. But nothing in his long career had prepared him for this moment. Humanity was about to take its first steps onto the galactic stage. Behind him, Commander Lisa Monroe checked her sidearm for the 3rd time. She was tall and sharp-eyed, with the careful movements of someone trained to spot danger before it arrived. As chief of security for the human delegation, she trusted no one and nothing until proven safe. "You really think they will welcome us?" she asked. Daniel smiled without humor. They invited us. Whether that means welcome, I suppose we will find out. Dr. Kevin Brooks joined them at the window. He was younger than the others, barely 40, with thick glasses and a nervous habit of adjusting them when he was thinking. As humanity's best xenolinguist, he had spent 2 years learning every council language he could find. He spoke 7 of them fluently now, though he admitted the Krythax tongue still gave him trouble. The transmission said the High Chancellor himself will greet us, Kevin said. That is supposed to be a great honor. Lisa made a small sound that was not quite a laugh. Or they want to look us over, like animals at a market. Daniel turned away from the window. Whatever they want, we go in with our heads high. We represent 8 billion people back home. We do not get to be afraid. The shuttle carried them down through the atmosphere. Verath Prime grew larger in the viewports until they could see the individual towers of the capital city, each one reaching toward the sky like fingers made of glass and light. The architecture was alien and beautiful, built by minds that had been creating wonders when humans were still living in caves. They landed on a platform that floated above the city. The air was thin and cold, with a strange smell that Kevin said came from the purple vegetation that grew in carefully arranged gardens along the walkways. A delegation waited for them at the end of a long silver bridge. They were tall and thin, with feathered bodies that shifted between blue and gold as they moved. Their faces were sharp, almost bird-like, with large eyes that seemed to look through, rather than at, the humans approaching them. Behind them stood the Krythax, massive reptilian creatures covered in dark green scales. Each one was nearly 8 feet tall, with arms thick as tree trunks and mouths full of teeth that could crush bone. Daniel led his team across the bridge with steady steps. He had read every file, studied every report. He knew the Vylori considered themselves the most civilized species in the galaxy. He knew the Krythax valued strength above all else. He knew both species saw humans as children, newcomers who had barely learned to walk among the stars. High Chancellor Zorveth stepped forward. He was ancient even by Vylori standards. His feathers faded to a pale silver that caught the light, like metal. His voice was smooth and musical when he spoke, though the translation device in Daniel's ear made the words flat and mechanical. Humans, Zorveth said, you have traveled far to stand before the council. We acknowledge your arrival. Daniel bowed his head slightly. High Chancellor, on behalf of Earth and all human colonies, I thank you for this invitation. We come in peace, seeking friendship and partnership with the great species of the galaxy. Zorveth's expression did not change, but something flickered in his large eyes. It might have been amusement. It might have been contempt. Partnership, he repeated, a bold word for a species so young. Your kind discovered fire only moments ago by galactic standards. You split the atom yesterday. You reached the stars this morning. And now you speak of partnership with civilizations that have existed for longer than your world has had life. Lisa's hand moved toward her weapon, but Daniel stopped her with a small gesture. We are young, Daniel agreed, but we learn quickly, and we believe we have much to offer. Zorveth made a sound that might have been a laugh. We shall see. The Council has decided to grant humanity probationary membership. You will have no voting rights. You will not travel beyond designated zones. You will not trade with Council species without approval. You will submit to inspection of your vessels and colonies at any time we choose. Kevin's face went pale as he translated the terms in his head. These were not the conditions of an ally. These were the conditions of a subject. Daniel felt the anger rise in his chest, hot and sharp. He thought of the men and women who had died to get humanity this far. The scientists and explorers and soldiers who had sacrificed everything so that humans could reach the stars. He thought of his daughter, back on Earth, who had hugged him goodbye and told him to make her proud. He took a breath and pushed the anger down. "We accept these terms," he said. "For now." Zorveth tilted his head. "For now? We understand that trust must be earned. We will prove ourselves worthy of full membership in time." The Valori studied him for a long moment. Then he turned and gestured for the humans to follow. "Come, we will show you to your quarters. They are modest, but suitable for a species of your standing." The quarters were small and plain, nothing like the grand chambers they had passed on the way. Lisa swept the rooms for listening devices and found 7. She disabled none of them, knowing it would only make the council suspicious. That night, Daniel sat alone at a small desk and wrote his report to Earth. He chose his words carefully, knowing the council would read every one. "The council sees us as children," he wrote. "They expect us to fail. They expect us to accept our place at the bottom and stay there forever. They do not understand what humanity is capable of. They do not know that children grow up. But they will learn. Whatever it takes, however long it takes, they will learn." He sent the message and turned off the light. Outside the window, the 3 moons of Verath Prime glowed in the alien sky, cold and distant and utterly indifferent to the small creatures below, who dreamed of being more than they were. Daniel dreamed too. He dreamed of a day when humans would stand as equals among the stars. He did not know how long it would take, or what it would cost. But he knew, with a certainty that burned in his bones, that the day would come. It had to.